Welcome to the stream.
Hello, everyone. Hello.
How's everybody doing? I went Shirley Jackson time there in the comments
I love it.
because it is Shirley Jackson time.
I mean,
Ladies and
arguably,
gentlemen.
it's
Yeah, go
always
ahead.
Shirley Jackson time. Oh, I was gonna
It
say
is always Shirley Jackson time. That's how I feel.
but today,
folks are coming in. We're still at zero. But
perfect.
if you're hitting the replay today, we are working our way through story number 7 or so of The Dark Descent. This is a story club on YouTube every Thursday. Sarah and I are speculative fiction writers, horror writers, fantasy writers, and we are working our way through this collection, book club style. And today we are reading The Summer People by the Queen, Shirley Jackson.
I was telling Asa before we started that I thought this was only the second Shirley Jackson short story, hard to say, that I've ever read. It's actually the third. But you've read a lot more of her work, I believe.
I'm working my way through the canon. I'm probably maybe at 60% of like widely published Jackson. But who knows how, I just cracked open her biography. And so, there's always the kind of miscellany, those other lost works and so on, including a 1-page short story called Janice that she wrote in college. That's a sort of parody, just a very light-hearted suicide letter, but it's very dark.
Oh.
Yeah. So kind of starting to dig into that material.
Oh my.
But I definitely have a deep fondness for this story.
Yes, because you had read this one previously.
I read this one early this year, and I'm also kind of a jerk New Yorker. Not full on. I'm not a proper summer person, but I lived in New York City for 13 years and was the kind of person who would like go out into these small New York towns and experience it.
Mm-hmm.
The setup of this story, if y'all haven't read it, is you have a couple New York elderly folks who have a cabin outside the city, a country cottage, and they go and they hang out at the town all summer. And this particular summer, they decide to stay into the fall past Labor Day. Anyway, I relate to this because I'm sure have been judged, and I certainly have judged, come through with a degree of condescension. There's a line in here. Mrs. Allison always spoke of the city to Mr. Babcock as though it were Mr. Babcock's dream to go there. I've been guilty of that. Just like, well, in New York, So anyway, this is a good one. I really like this one, and it does hit for me. Welcome to the stream. We've got a couple people here online now. Let us know where you're tuning in from. Let us know if you read the story. Let us know if you've read The Lottery, if you haven't read Summer People. So I really love this one, Sarah. I really do. Do you want to give us the quick, as Sarah and I like to say, the tell your friend at the bar summary? You want to share that?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's even so much that you said in the intro that I'm excited to talk about. But yeah, there's this couple, the Allisons, who are 58 and 60 years old. They have a lake house, and they decide one year to stay after Labor Day. Usually they leave the Tuesday before Labor Day. This year, just on a whim, they're going to stay. And so they go make their preparations. They go to pick up groceries, get kerosene and everything they need. And along the way, they run into the townsfolk. And there's a very like us and them mentality that I want to talk about here. And every single one of the townsfolk is like, oh, you're staying after Labor. Nobody stays after Labor Day. Nobody stay. And like everybody, if this hadn't been a little bit of an older story, like relatively speaking, I would have been like, oh my gosh, this is a little bit of a cliche, because it's like you go into the grocery and the guy's like, nobody stays after Labor Day. And it's like, okay, take the hint. But they decide to stay after Labor Day, and things get real weird. Even in addition to the townsfolk telling them that nobody stays after Labor Day, things get weird. And I don't know if we want to jump right into talking about what happens at the end, but there is this, it's a beautifully ambiguous ending in a way. And I think that's what I'm going to say about that. Am I leaving anything out?
Yeah, I think ambiguous, but unambiguously dark AF.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
it it is. It's just it's a black hole of an ending, and we can't see into it, but it's definitely a black hole.
That's magic. That's something that's really magic about this story. And I love that you said that. What happens is ambiguous. How we feel is not.
Mm,
Like this left me like punched in the gut.
mm, yeah,
Even though, the logistics of exactly what's going on or exactly what happened are alluded to, but not clarified. So that's so good. How do you do that? Just magic?
I mean, yeah, Miss Jackson. I do want to crack that though. I think that is the question. How do you do it? We'll never know her alchemy per se, but I think we can try, Sarah.
I think we can. I kind of want to dig into this and like take a look at what makes this magic work. Hey,
Yeah,
Mateo.
Mateo, welcome.
Hello. If you're just joining us, let us know if you want to, no pressure, but let us know in the comments, you know, who you are, where you're writing in from, and whether you have read Shirley Jackson's The Summer People. So I had
Yeah.
not before this.
Well, I mean, so where should we start? Where do you think the place to start is?
I want to start by talking about what it means to be a tourist. Because you mentioned that in the intro a little bit. You said, these people, the summer people, go to this little town and they have this sort of like, I think you used the word condescending manner. And tell me a little bit more about that, because I think that sets up this really interesting dichotomy for the story and is a lot of the tension.
Yeah, yeah, and actually, the more you talk about it, I actually have had more. I was really joking about the personal experience I had, but I did work several summers as a writing teacher, as a tutor in summer people areas. So I did this in the
Oh,
Hamptons. I did this in a fancy island in Maine. And the summer people, primarily, it's like an economic factor. All these
yes.
folks come in for the summer and they just like, that's the time that the town is on, the money is spent. And I think specifically, it's not so much that they're tourists because they are living there. They have an expectation of
Mm,
what's available to them because all those things are available to them in the summer when they have money, because money talks. And if you're rich, you get what you want. And if you need oil, you get it.
mm,
And if you need fresh food, you get it. And you come to live that way. You live that way on Fifth Avenue or in the Hamptons or on the lake. And so that's the critical mindset here, is like the expectations are met, that
mm,
like I am so and so, I am deigning, whether this is explicit or not. It's like, I'm here, I'm giving you my money. I joke, it's like, there's just like Americans really, if you can pay for it, it's very like, it's yours. And I think that is the attitude of summer people in all summer places. Like, we're
mm.
here, we have money, deliver to us what you need. And if you haven't read the story, Mateo, that is the ilk of the Allisons. This is a couple who clearly can afford a cottage on the lake outside the city where they normally live, and they have money to get what they need. So yes, that's like
Mm.
the basic contour there, I think.
I that's so interesting, and this might be very minor, but I hadn't really thought, hey Laura, I hadn't really thought much about the money angle. I saw it as more like we're big city status, like, and just we're, just superior to you. We're better educated. We know how things are in the big city. But it could be either one, it could be both. Um, I'm trying to think. I felt like this too, and I've never really been a person with a lot of money, even. But like going to a place, you're very you centric, or at least this is my experience. Is I go somewhere and you forget that like if you're speaking really loudly, other people can hear you.
Mm,
And
mm.
because you're so enamored in your own little world and your own experience and your own travel, that it's really easy when you're traveling somewhere to overlook the locals. So
Yeah, for sure. I mean, especially in small towns where
yeah.
the vibe is so much subtler. There's such everyone knows everyone, so it's kind of like when there's an outsider, it's so loud. I want to
Yeah.
point to, because this vlog that I'm recording today, I just did this exercise where I was copying by hand The Witch. So
Oh.
there's this other Shirley Jackson story that Sarah and I and others on this ecosystem of fiction have gotten really excited about, called The Witch. And I was copying out the first paragraph of this story, and I noticed this detail about an infant's head kind of knocking, super subtle,
Mm.
but it had the menace and the destructive
Mm.
potential. And then after that, revisited this. And so I want to turn to a sentence here in the first paragraph and talk about that, because it doubles both as that, and it also says something about what we're talking about the class and priorities.
Yes, please.
Laura, I'm going to get to all these great comments. Un momento. All right. So, and it has to do with decay. Okay. And it says that they don't fix this cabin.
Mm.
All right. They say, although the Allisons loved their summer cottage, looked forward to arriving in the early summer, and hated to leave in the fall, they had not troubled themselves to put in any improvements.
Mm.
There was no heat, no running water. So at one level, the no improvements means they just haven't made it comfortable.
Yeah.
But there's also this feeling of like they're kind of just letting it be, because they don't have to deal with it. The day they have to deal with it, they can just pay someone to deal with it. And so for me, that little detail in the beginning of this paragraph is this like subtle suggestion that things could collapse, things could fail, of decay, of neglect, menace, horror, while this like amazing characterization of these people. I want to hear what Laura Huntress has to say here.
Yeah.
In Vermont, I've heard the locals calling out-of-towners flatlanders. As a local, you avoid the tourist areas usually. When family comes in, though, it's unavoidable. True. All
Yes.
true.
I lived in Chicago for 2 years without going to Navy Pier, so I feel that.
I can speak to this detail as well about, so I lived in Marfa, Texas for 2 years, which is a town of 2,000 people.
Oh, wow.
And they only, this is like, they only have like one stoplight. It is so small. And so, yeah, there is a similar vibe. That place gets so much outsiders all year round, but like this same idea is that there's townies, outsiders, locals. She condescendingly calls them natives.
Yeah.
Right. Mrs. Allison. So I love this. World round, we have this distinction between, the visitors and the locals and the summer people.
Or people who belong and people who don't belong.
Right.
And
so,
yeah.
I think what makes this a horror story and what makes this like so delicious is that it potentially maps this general feeling of disdain that townies have for rich foreigners who come in into like its ultimate like horror conclusion. Yeah. Right. Which I think is like, excuse me, like kind of a common strategy for horror. If you take like something like Get Out, Black boyfriend goes home with white racist girlfriend family. That's going to be bad. Let's push this to its logical, most fantastical conclusion, and you get Out. We have a town where working class folks, they serve these rich city people. Let's just like push that fantasy a little bit. Not only do they resent them, are annoyed by them, maybe they want to kill them. And that's what this story does.
I love that. I hadn't thought about the connection to Get Out, but that's very good. That's very primo.
I think you Get Out, I mean, or any number of horror concepts, actually that is like a Tananarive Due take that she taught. Tananarive Due, the Afrofuturist horror writer. If you don't know her work, she's great. I took this little like horror workshop of hers, and that was kind of just one little like idea that she put in there. It's like push something to its speculative end, And I think Get Out works. Get Out is a good analogy because we're dealing with like demographics, but I think it applies like really. You could just, because what happens in this story probably would never happen, and I think that is what would maybe qualify it as a horror story. For those people who haven't read it, why don't you spill the beans, Sarah? What does happen in this story?
Whoa,
or what do we think happens? What do we think happens?
Yeah,
what do we know happens, and what do we think happens?
Right, because there might be a little bit of a difference there. So as Asa alluded to earlier, There's this subtle violence, there's this subtle tension that continues building as the Allisons prepare to stay past Labor Day in their cottage, which they own. But as you pointed out, they own the property and they like to use it, but they don't necessarily invest care into it. And I think that there's a lot to be said there. As we go through, they get these warnings from the townsfolk, like, oh, nobody stays after Labor Day. And we get the notion that the Allisons are a little bit, they're there a little bit to like use the place, to like harvest it, to, you know, like you do when you're on vacation. You go there, you have a good time, you're not interested in like, oh, what's the local tax situation like? You don't care. It even goes so far as to show us that like Mrs. Allison doesn't even know the names of the people that she interacts with on a regular basis.
For 20 years.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, you spend 20 years.
Right. She's been having the same small talk with the same people for 20 summers and doesn't know their names.
Yeah. So I think that says a lot. And so there's this really long, slow burn for several pages, and we get this beautiful repetition of visiting a person locally to like get something or pick up something or buy something, and then getting the message nobody stays after Labor Day. Until, and I don't know if this is necessarily like a tipping point, but Mr. Allison goes to the mailbox. He has to walk a mile to go to the mailbox, and there's no mail. And like, I think for me, that was the first hint of violence I saw in the story.
Because at that point you thought that someone had taken the mail?
I think that at that was the moment that I got a sense of, because I read this story, it feels like Mrs. Allison is the main character here. And so I was reading this through her eyes, and to have like her husband of, you know, however many years, probably 40, 50, not 50 years, 40 years, come into your home and like be angry. And her reaction to his anger, she's placating him. So that was the first unsettling part for me. Her husband comes back and there is some violence in him. It continues to build. After they were expecting a letter from their kids who are grown with children of their own. They don't get a letter. All these very uncomfortable things continue to happen throughout the story. Mrs. Allison at one point is like peeling apples for an apple pie, and her husband comes in again. And this is where things overtly start to go wrong, I think. And what happens is Mr. Allison comes in and the car won't start. And they haven't been able to get kerosene. They haven't been able to get groceries because nobody stays after Labor Day. There's no supply. They don't have anything for them. And so Mr. Allison comes in and he's very angry. And he has noted before, I thought this was interesting for his character, that he thinks that people are out to get him a little bit. We get this twice from Mr. Allison. He seems to think like, oh, well, they're just withholding the kerosene so that we have to pay more later in the winter to get it. Like, he seems like very, he think people are after him. And at first you're like, oh, that's a little silly. But then the story keeps going. So Mr. Allison,
that's actually funny because it's like the concern about the money.
Yeah.
That's like the irony of the whole thing, right? Like, rich people care about money. Like, rich people are thinking about money.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, everyone who lives here, they're just like living their life and they make a living off the summer people, but they clearly don't care about money. Otherwise, they would have just, great, we'll double. Yeah. Oh,
right. I'll sell you.
I do have a barrel in the back. It's twice as much this time of year, you know, extra, but I do, you know, totally. Oh, your car, you know, why not just like sabotage the car and then go fix it? Right. And so that's like he's just showing the logic. He's like, oh, these townies are trying to scam us. And it's like, no,
they're not. No,
these townies don't care about money. They care about your soul.
That's such a good point.
I want to bring in some of these good comments here. So Laura Hunter says she can't even remember where she knows certain people from, even though she's seen them off and on for 20 years. They're interchangeable to her. Exactly.
Interchangeable is a really good word here. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the natives. I mean, it's like for her, this is just all kind of like this amusement park. To the harvesting aspect of it, you have to minimax what you can get out of min-max. Yeah, sorry.
No, you're
You
good.
have to min-max what you get out of vacation.
That is an interesting analogy. Yes.
If you're going to Disneyland, you have to make sure you run everywhere to not miss out on anything. It's interesting that she alludes so often to not being able to treat. I want to talk about this too.
I do too. Yeah.
To be able to treat the country workers in the same manner in which she treats city workers. Before getting into that, I just want to highlight for anyone new on the feed, Sarah and I are here on Story Club every Thursday, and we've got some regulars like the great reader and writer Laura Huntress to facilitate all that. There's a Discord happening. So if this is your first time engaging with us, we'll, in the video descriptions, in the comments, we'll put the Discord server so that like this jams even more, because this is such a great comment, Laura. I appreciate this. Sarah, what is your take on this?
So honestly, I think this dovetails nicely with where I was going with this thing about Mr. Allison having this like violence inside of him. Mrs. Allison, you know, with whom we're maybe a little more sympathetic. She's very imperious. She's very condescending. She seems to look down on the locals as like a little simpler. As she even, there's an elderly man who works at, I believe, I don't know if it's the hardware store. He sells her some glass baking dishes. And she's like, well, one of these was chipped. Oh, he's so innocent. He probably didn't even know. And there's such an interesting, I think, split there between how she perceives the locals and who they actually are. It's pointed out that she's maybe not she's kind of a Karen, I think, to people in the city, where I think she's used to snapping her fingers and like the salespeople come running. And here there aren't salespeople to come running. There's just the locals. And she can't use her usual tricks. And like you said, this ties in with them not being interested in money, because you get the idea that like, what if I put an extra, $100 on here?
Right.
And it's like, I still don't think that they would deal with her.
Yes.
Yes. So I feel like she feels insulted because she's not getting the royal treatment she thinks she deserves. And she also, like, she's insulted, but she covers it up by being even more patronizing. Like, oh, these little people, they don't even know. They don't even know.
Right. Well, I also think, though, that she's multidimensional in that there is a degree of social sophistication. Like, she's not totally wrong in her instinct to code switch, right? Like, she does recognize that things are done differently here.
Yes.
That things are more oblique, that you can't say exactly what you want, that you have to wait, that there's like a little bit of ritual, this like downshifting. Like there's these ways that people talk and communicate and engage in the country, as it were, that are different. And so that was striking to me, because she actually was like very aware. She was simultaneously like very kind of dismissive, condescending, like bigoted almost, maybe just like whatever, unkind, but sharp. And like, so she could both see them, but also her valuation of them was so low. But I do think it's like she didn't see them and didn't bother to know their names, but she was astute at some level in her understanding of them, which I think her expertise about them is partly what delivers the message at the end of like how bad things got.
I appreciate that. When I initially read it, I just thought that she was looking to use people, and like the code switching was she spoke differently to the people here than to the people in the city. She was aware that there was a difference, but because that was her way of talking down to them, or, she still wanted to get what she could out of the relationship. I don't know if you can call it that, but like she was looking to get what she could for herself. And that selfishness, I think, is, well, I have a lot of things that I want to say about this, but
And
yeah, I think that's interesting.
maybe that is what Jackson is showing us is being punished.
That was where I was going to go with this.
Yeah, like maybe that is like the sin, as it were. Mr. Hartwell, the editor, does say something to that effect here in the intro. He says that this tale, The Summer People, is an interesting comparison to Lucy Clifford's The New Mother, which we read earlier in Story Club. Here, however, the irony is overt, since we have the form of the moral tale without the morality at all. What do you make of that?
I had to think about that a lot. I ended up thinking that maybe there was a little bit of morality. So I could go kind of either way on this. So there is a little bit of quote unquote morality in that a rule has been broken and the Allisons must pay the price. The Allisons have stayed past Labor Day, which by itself is not a moral, like there's no moral superiority or inferiority to staying or not staying, just that it's something they don't usually do. But I think that them staying past Labor Day, and I want to like go back to, breaking the rule. I was looking for them specifically doing something bad or wrong, and they don't. So really, I think a lot of what upset me in like a good horror story way with this story was that they were punished for something that we wouldn't know to avoid ourselves. They were punished for kind of no reason. And regardless of whether they stayed past Labor Day this summer or the next summer, because the only thing they could have done differently is left when they usually did. And like nothing bad would have happened, arguably. And their only sin here is breaking one of their traditions. It's not a rule, it's a tradition.
I love this. Yeah.
So
because I think a big question is like, because surely there's dozens of Summer People, right? It's like if the Johansons stayed,
right,
would they cut the car? Would they cut the gas? Would they essentially leave them in potentially fatal circumstances? Maybe not. Right. So what is it about the Allisons? And yes, it's in its omission that almost makes the story like most vicious, because we don't see the time that the Allisons bought up like some kind of massive gentrification. Like, they bought the old diner and turned it into we don't have a clear like sin, a clear violation. All we see is how she thinks about these people, which is terrible. Right. And we never see the people seeing her think that. Like we only see it from her perspective. Mm-hmm. And so it's really amazing, because maybe the logic of the story and Jackson's writing like lets all those dots not connect, but they're like pointing to each other or whatever. Mm-hmm. And even though they're never connected, like we can like cross the line and feel that their potential doom at the end is just.
Yeah. But is it? And maybe for me, that's what was most horrifying, I think, was feeling that like they were kind of like mean people and a little selfish, but it's like, so are we.
Right.
There wasn't a line that was crossed that was unforgivable or inexcusable. So I don't know. Yeah. So I think that for me was like, and I like your point, like, oh, if another family, the Johansons, had stayed after Labor Day, would the same thing have happened to them?
Right.
It could go either way.
Go ahead.
And I think it's even scarier to think that it's dispassionate. I think it's even scarier to think that like, yeah, this would have happened to anybody who stayed after Labor Day. And it's just unfortunate that the Allisons decided to stay and ignored the somewhat subtle, maybe myriad warnings from the townsfolk that like nobody stays after Labor Day. But I think that it speaks to a larger indifference from the universe. It speaks to a fundamental non-existence of rules to break or not break. And they didn't earn what happened to them at the end, at least what I took away from the story. And that's what's scary is it's completely arbitrary. You could go on vacation and have this happen to you and you might not even 100% know why.
That is really interesting. And essentially, yeah, I like that. I like looking at it from like what's the darker version of this, and I think you're totally right. And that there's almost something dispassionate about the justice that the locals do, which is that all they're actually doing is not really treating them like real people.
Yeah.
Which is only what is being done to them. So on the one hand, it seems like this is not eye for an eye at all.
No.
It's like we have Mrs. Allison who's like condescending and like a jerk and like a rich lady from the city, but like ultimately she doesn't deserve to be like killed. But all that they're doing is not, no one's like putting, you know, I mean, I guess the sabotage is another level if the car was in fact sabotaged. But essentially all they're doing is just not treating them like real people, which, you know, the consequences of that vary.
Yeah.
You know, they can be just annoying and it's rude, or it can be like life-threatening.
Yeah. Let's talk real quick, just for like full circle sake.
Yeah.
What does happen?
Okay.
What do you see happening at the end? Because then I think this will flavor what we talk about going back just a little bit.
I feel like at the end, I just feel like throughout the townsfolk are way sharper than she gives them credit for, which I think should be a given, but specifically even like their dialogue. So for example, when dude comes up in the like kerosene truck.
Oh, the kerosene guy.
And he seemingly is just, you know, I'm trying to find it.
Let's see, page 113, 112, 113.
Okay. Don't seize I can, the man said. After Labor Day, it's harder. The truck drove away and Miss Allison, da, 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 da. So yeah, before that, he says, yeah, I mean, he's just kind of playing dumb.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like he's a script. Yeah, it's like, no, we don't have any. I think this is all like, I think the second that truck turns around the corner, like he and like the teenage boy in the next streets like start dying, you know, start dying of laughter or whatever, you know. And I think that they're just like enjoying watching these people squirm. And it just goes from like bad to worse. And it's probably nobody's really even thinking about it. They're like, oh, hey, let's go up there and like cut his car tonight, you know? And
or
like,
are they?
You know, yeah. I mean, I just think it's like, yeah, it becomes like they are not people. They start treating them. It's like I keep coming. I'm like really thinking of like boys and men a lot here. Like just like boys like knocking over cows at night or like whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Just like they're not people. Let's go poke fun at them. Let's mess with them. You know?
Yeah, a lack of empathy, a lack of community.
Yeah.
A lack of belonging and not belonging. I feel like there's a very thick cultural line between these two parties, and what's allowed to happen to people is terrifying.
Yeah. Laura. I wonder if this is an instance of folk horror and something supernatural or ritualistic happens with the townspeople after Labor Day. I
thought about that. Asa, did you consider this?
Go ahead, Sarah.
I've seen way too much supernatural. And so, you know, I always think like, oh, you know, the scarecrow comes alive the night before Halloween. It's like, yeah, okay. But the town-based story, it's interesting because I believe that the intro by David G. Hartwell talks about this being a house-based story. And I would argue that it is. I think looking at the town as like the setting isn't as effective as looking at the house as the setting. And I'm saying this because the townspeople like belong to like the town. And I don't get a sense that there is And that's the thing, is like there's something sinister going on, but I don't know if we're given enough information to say like, oh yes, of course, they're all secret Satanists and they're waiting for Samhain and whatever. It's more just an uncomfortable, there's no reason. And like, again, I'm gonna keep harping on that, because like for me it's so much scarier. It would be so much less scary for me if they're like, oh yes, we're all part of a cult and we murder everyone after Labor Day. Like that is less frightening to me than why are they doing this? Like there's no reason. Like the vague unreasonableness. Like who cut the, what was it, the wires in the car and the
Yeah.
phone cord? So they're leaving these people isolated. The Allisons are isolated in their little dream cottage, arguably just like they wanted to be. And they don't deserve thumbs up, thanks Zoom. They don't necessarily deserve this punishment that they're getting. And that's, I don't know, I'm going to keep coming back to that because that is so terrifying to me. The thought that, yes, Mateo, that's an interesting point. We talked about the Call of Cthulhu, I think it was last week, and ambiguity is often better. It's more upsetting to me. It's, I don't know if you watch a lot of like terrible horror movies, but I love them. One of the things that like breaks tension the most in a terrible horror movie is when they reveal the monster in a clumsy way. They don't give you enough tension. They don't keep it ambiguous enough. And that ambiguity is necessary for horror. And there is so much ambiguity here. And yet I'm not left feeling like I'm lacking anything.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Okay. Sorry. I could talk for 100 hours.
No, I love that. I think that's all super interesting. And what I was thinking about while you were talking there was like, kind of like, is the experience of the townspeople endangering these folks' lives, damaging the car, cutting the phone line, is that more about punishment or pleasure? Like what is the emotional like benefit that's being activated there? Is it like a feeling of enacting justice, or is it like, I just don't like these people, or you know what I mean? It's just there's no answers there either. Like we don't know why they're doing it. It's, we can guess at things, but we're never shown how it feels to do it. We don't know if it happens for certain.
Mm-hmm. That is such a good point, because one of the things that is most important in storytelling is creating cause and effect. And we see the effect at the end. The Allisons are isolated violently from everyone else in the town. We don't 100% know the cause.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that's it could have come out very narratively unsatisfying, but it didn't.
Like, yeah, a little bit more of a left field take here. It's almost like, none of this could have been, there actually could have been no real sabotage. It's like, this is just her guilt, like projecting, and his, he's the one who tells us. He's the one who tells us that the car's damaged.
Yeah.
They don't know that the phone, they're the ones who anticipate their doom more than anyone else.
Can I tell you how much I really like that reading? That was initially where I think I was going with things, because what's terrifying about this story is the slow buildup of like this nihilistic, isolation. I'm trying to find where, at some point, Mr. Allison, who like doesn't know how to fix his own car, he says, well, even I could tell that the line was cut. And it's like, okay, but could you? I love that ambiguity there. But they're going
right. This is the guy who can't fix his car. This is the guy who last summer something happened and he could not fix it. I mean, look, I don't know about anyone there, but like, it's every time you go to the mechanic, they're like, well, the third axle on the thing, and I'm like, yeah, take my grant, whatever, like, and so we don't know. This guy doesn't know. Sorry, but go on.
This is, I think, even more upsetting is that, they are scaring themselves. They're isolating themselves. And I think that reading is really interesting. And like going through the imagery in the story with the apple peeling, just very deliberate, very unsettling details. The radio is dying, and the last thing they hear is the announcer speaking glowingly of the virtues of razor blades. It's like she is very, very specifically talking about very violent things, but it does leave the question, are the Allisons just imagining this? Can we talk about the letter?
Yes, I want to. Before we talk about the letter, this particular reading, what? Oh my, no idea what's going on.
It's the second time that's happened today. I don't know what's happening.
One other thing about this reading is it's potentially the darkest reading of all, because it's almost darker to think that people can be so ill-willed, so full of just like venom and blackness towards their fellow man, as it were, that they can like conceive that several people are out to get them and kill them. Then, like, aggrieved townspeople being angry, like,
yeah, seeking some kind of justice.
The former is almost a darker vision of like humanity.
Yeah. And that's really what gets under my skin. That is really what gets under my skin. Because I think a lot of the reason we read horror, and we saw this in the Lucy Clifford, I think it was, The Night Mother, horror, a lot of horror is educational. And by that, I mean, it's a moral tale of, hey, if you do this, or if you don't do this, the boogeyman will get you, or you'll be safe. Or if you go into the basement, you're going to get killed by the slasher. Like, we're used to having, we're used to learning lessons from the horror, and there's like no lesson here.
Yeah, no, there's not. Yeah, that's yeah. I mean, it keeps going back to this idea of like open. How open can you keep a text? Let's get into everyone's comments here.
Yeah.
Mateo, in Supernatural, there was some sabotage, but they were also very inviting, right?
If you're talking about the season 1 episode with the scarecrow, yeah, because I think they wanted to like keep them there so they could like feed them to the trees and sacrifice them. So yeah, I think that I was talking about that in a like sort of distancing sort of sense. That's a very like different kind of story, because it does have what we would usually expect. It does have a sin and a punishment, and it is a creepy, friendly small town, but I think that's where it's so different from this story. Oh, I want to talk about this.
Lore Huntress, do you think the letter actually came from the sun, or was it forged? Ready, set, go. I just want to hear about your take on the sibs, the children in general, and the letters and how all that functions.
Can we talk about tradition? Oh, this just... Okay, so the Allisons are in their lake house. Every year they do this. Every year they look forward to getting letters from their 2 grown children, whose names I wrote down, Carol and Jerry. Okay, I had to look. Carol and Jerry. And specifically, explicitly, I have to read this. It would be a pleasant, dutiful letter, full of the doings of Alice and the children, reporting progress with his job, commenting on the weather, closing with love for them all. Mr. and Mrs. Allison could, if they wished, recite a pattern letter from either of their children. What's important, at least, okay, sorry, I sound like professorial. I'm just going to say, in my view, what's important here is the familiarity. The Allisons are seeking something familiar. They're seeking a rote letter, R-O-T-E, but also maybe, wrote, past tense of write, a rote letter from their children. They've been looking forward to it, expecting it, because it's familiar, not because it will tell them new news, but because it is comforting. And the letter comes, and if you read the letter itself, it's not like, hey, I'm going on a murder spree. It is like very distant. It's very just...
Does it fit? I mean, it does fit what they expect.
It fits what they expect, but it does it in a way that calls out a lot of the things that we've been thinking about throughout the story. It calls out the fact that the Allisons are infirm, that they're older, that they don't know how much time they'll have left. Do you want to read the letter real quick?
Yes, sure. Dear Mother and Dad, it began in Jerry's familiar, rather childish handwriting.
Familiar and childish. Sorry. This is so exciting.
It's so close to the end that the letter comes.
Yeah.
I'm glad this goes to the lake as usual. We always thought you came back too soon and ought to stay up there as long as you could. Alice says that now that you're not as young as you used to be and have no demands on your time, fewer friends, etc., in the city, you ought to get what you ought to get what fun you can while you can. Since you two are both happy up there, it's a good idea for you to stay. That's the first half. Yeah,
There's
so
a lot going on there.
No, I know. Yeah, so tell us, like, what is this? Because, yeah, this seemed to really. I think I can't wait to hear everything you have to say about this. What's
Okay.
at work? What's at work here?
So what's at work is I was thinking about Shirley Jackson writing this letter and being very careful of being of two minds about it. This is one of those letters that, like, you can sense something ominous. Like, who points out someone else's age and frailty? But at the same time, it's done in a conversational manner. So if you took this to court and you were like, look, this is evidence that something was going on, you could read this in a way that's like, yeah, no, that's a letter, hon. Like, that's normal. But since we've come to it with these expectations and with these, they even talk about Mr. Allison slitting the letter open with great deliberation. It's like, it's so gross and so violent. So yeah, okay, that's my beginning thoughts. But did you have anything that you wanted to talk about there?
Not specific. I mean, I think the letter has already started to make more sense to me in larger context of understanding these characters. What I was thinking about is, like, they don't have much of a relationship with their kid. They're so isolated, right? So these kids aren't rushing. I mean, they have a beautiful cottage on the lake, and yeah, we all have kids and families, and we're busy and whatever. They clearly never see their parents. These missives are clearly the absolute minimum, coming from some scrape at the bottom of the barrel sense of filial duty. You know what I mean? It's like, if we need more, per your point about, like, building the case, if we need more of a case that these people are awful, the relationship they have with their children and the letters written to them by their children support it.
Yeah.
That's kind of the one thing I have to say.
Yeah.
So keep going. Yeah.
Do you want me to, like?
Yeah, go on.
Okay, so the second half of the letter. So
Yeah.
Mrs. Allison does something interesting. So her husband reads a little slower than she does. So she picks up the envelope and she starts looking at it. She has this, like, sinking, horrible feeling as she reads what is on the surface a very trite and unfeeling letter. She picks up the empty envelope, not knowing exactly what she wanted from it. It was addressed usual in Jerry's handwriting. She feels like something's wrong, and she picks up the envelope expecting there, and that's why I want to look at the comment that you have on the screen here. Do you think the letter actually came from the son, or was it forged? I think it did come from the son, and in my opinion, like, that's ultimately more horrifying.
Sorry,
but
I keep putting up the wrong comment.
No, you're good.
This one. You think it did come from the fun? Yeah.
I don't
You
know,
think it
but
did?
I think it did come from the son. But should I finish it real quick and then?
Yeah.
Okay. So the second half of the letter, after she's, like, looking at the envelope, and of course, if they get the measles, etc., now they will be better off later. Alice as well, of course. Me too. Been playing a lot of bridge lately with some people you don't know, named Carruthers. Nice young couple about our age. Well, we'll close now, as I guess it bores you to hear about things so far away. Tell Dad old Dixon in our Chicago office died. He used to ask about Dad a lot. Have a good time up at the lake and don't bother hurrying back. Love from all of us, Jerry. Wow.
It's so dark. Yeah, okay. I'm starting to really fall in love with this letter also.
This was like the linchpin for me, this letter. Yeah.
Well, it's delivered that way, in the sense that, like, we're introduced early in the story that they haven't heard from the kids, and then we finally hear from them.
Yeah, I want to say, like, the first page, like, we're introduced to these kids and we're told that they're not there.
That makes sense.
Sorry.
I think that, so per this question that you have, Laura, whether this was from the sun or forged, this is almost just like another version of the same question that we keep having which is like, were these people, was the phone deliberately cut or did it just cut? Like every time there's an opportunity for evil, it's not confirmed, right? Like a forging would be very malicious. And it's like, Jackson never gives us, there's always a way in which that something that could be malicious could also have been innocuous. You know?
It really keeps us like second guessing, like, what do we know? What are we living through? Like, who are these other people in our lives? Like, she doesn't know her kids.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it just gets very, helps hammer home the darkness of the end. It's like, this is the summation of a life. It's like, we're at the end of our, you know, it's like, one can only imagine what you're thinking about there at the end. And you're just like, was I a good parent? You know, did I love my kids? Did I do right by them? Whatever. You clearly didn't, because they have to manufacture lame reasons. Oh, it must be boring. You're going to sign off now, you know? So it's sad. It's, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, that's how I would correspond with like a relative who I didn't see very often. Like someone, you know, I'm like maybe 5 years old and this is like a great aunt who's in her 70s and doesn't read, you know, very well. And it's got like so much separation in it from what's honest and true about life that it's just like this like gross fake facade. So
but let's try to like get like a little more like how did she create this amazing ending?
Yeah.
And like sort of like, what are her like tactics that she used here to create this effect? Like, where do we even start with that?
I think that I think we can start like at the end. We've covered a lot of the beginning. A lot of the beginning is set up. This is a very slow, at least in my reading, this felt like a very slow burn. We get a lot of setup. We get a lot of warnings from the townsfolk that nobody stays after Labor Day. We get trips to the mailbox that are fruitless. We get Mr. Allison's temper, which at times Mrs. Allison, let's see, was not quite sure what made her so nervous unless it was the probability of her husband's losing his temper completely. There is some darkness simmering under the surface here. And I'm sorry I keep bringing up Mr. and Mrs. Allison's relationship, but I feel like it's important because they're not, in a way, they're a unified front, but in another way, like they don't know each other at all, or maybe they know each other too well, but they're not together on things. Like she's scared of him, and that like jumped out at me. I don't know, every single time like he comes in, she's holding the knife. Like there's always some really awful tension between them.
I mean, her life seems relatively miserable in this marriage, apart from the sort of more macro loneliness.
Well, and speaking of miserable, are they even happy at the cabin? Like, do you remember anything other than talking about the soft breeze? I remember there was a soft breeze, but they seem miserable out here.
Well, most striking to me, and this was like, you know, we keep coming back to this idea of like early clues. Clues. I'm just going to read this piece of dialogue where they make the decision to stay.
Yes.
There isn't really anything to take us back to the city, Mrs. Allison told her husband seriously, as though it were a new idea. And he told her, as though neither of them had ever considered it. We might as well enjoy the country as long as possible. Prior, in the paragraphs prior, they think about this every year. Okay, right? Jackson tells us that every year they're like, oh, let's stay. And then the day they finally have a conversation about it, it's like a fresh thought. And so that felt odd. And it's like, are they detached from, like, are they so, what is that, right? That like, they're not aware that they've had the same conversation every year.
Oh, they are. They're just so stuck behind pretense. And I think that's what wraps up the letter with the son so nicely. They're pretending to have this happy family. They're pretending that they're of the same mind. Like, yes, they both want to stay at the lake cabin for, you know, whatever reason. It's pretty. They don't have friends in New York, whatever. But the fact that they need to pretend to each other, like, Oh, I
Mm.
say. And I don't even know if we get first names for them. I'm just going to call them Mr. and Mrs. Allison. Like, Miss Allison, oh, what a good idea. Oh, I hadn't thought of that, even though they both knew they had. They have to act in front of each other. They have to keep up this pretense. They have to keep up this facade that then later is echoed in the letter from their son Jerry, which is just, dear mother and father, here's the things you expect me to say. None of this is true. None of this is meaningful, right? We're here to go through the motions. I'm upset because I haven't received the letter from my son. It doesn't matter what the letter says. I just need a letter from my son. I need this
Yeah,
pretense to
right.
be fulfilled,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
I need this. I need not even maybe, I know I said earlier they like the familiarity of it, but like I feel even at this point, maybe part of what they're being punished for is their pretense. What they're being
Right.
punished for. And again, this is over here, Sarah being a weirdo, but like I think there really is something here about how they hide their true selves from each other, even at the beginning of the story. And then
Right.
later, like she knows her husband has a temper, but she never addresses it. We just know that she's terrified inside. And it's like what else are you pretending?
It just gets darker and darker. It's like I
Uh-huh.
finished reading this story and I was like, ooh, that's so dark. But what you're saying now is actually just, it's even sadder, just
Yeah.
that all these folks have is like this thin little myth, this thin
Yeah.
little narrative of their lives that requires them to, pretend with each other. And even that's being stripped with them.
Yeah. Like
Stripped
I
from
can
them.
say this is probably the darkest story I've ever read. I don't read a lot of short fiction, but out of what I think more so than The Lottery, more so than Shirley Jackson's The Witch, more so than anything else in this anthology, like Stephen King's story in here was actually kind of sweet and uplifting.
Oh,
But
yeah.
like this is like nihilism. This is like there is no meaning. This is like there's no meaning. You're going to suffer because there's no meaning, and you're going to do it alone.
Yeah.
Like this is dark. This was so
Yeah.
dark.
I'm getting goosebumps. Yeah, because it's not like the new mother, which the thing is, like, the new mother is this mortality or
Yeah. Yeah.
morality tale that there is good and evil, and if you're evil, then you'll be punished. And there's no good, there's just like punishment.
Yeah, there's
But
nothing. Yeah.
we got a lot of folks in the
Yeah, there's
comments.
good comments.
I want to get through all these comments. By the way, if you're just joining the feed, this is Horror Story Club. Sarah, Ray, Warner, and I. Every Thursday, we talk about, this week being an exception, we talk about a story from this short horror collection. Welcome. We're glad you're here. Lore Huntress says, that's interesting that they found their children ill-mannered when they didn't follow the familiar rules, yet expected the townspeople to be accepting of them going off plan.
Yes.
Did you have something you specifically wanted to say to that?
Yeah, but I think all of these here, I think all the comments here are related. So
Mateo, manners also presumably come from how parents raised you. True. Could the author be playing with the horror genre? I say that because if it's marketed as a horror novel, the author can include mundane things and then imagination takes over.
yes, the author is definitely playing. I feel like the author, like even above anything else, Shirley Jackson isn't just playing with horror. She's inventing a new kind of horror with this story. Like she is purposefully, she's doing so many things. She's making the familiar feel unfamiliar. She's making the pretenses between connected people. She's making those pretenses like seen. She's doing so many things. She's creating horror out of the mundane, and that's so hard to do. It's so hard to do, right?
And just horror on several tiers. I mean, that for me is like the real triumph of the story. It's like the most facile one is like, if you're a bad neighbor, you will get, it could get real bad.
Right.
But what we're talking about today reveals to me that like the deeper horror could just be the emptiness of their lives and how committed they are to that,
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Ooh, I have such shivers right now in the best way.
I know.
Yeah.
Oh.
Lord Hunter says,
Oh,
also, she may have ignored the townspeople being concerned about their staying because she was used to ignoring her husband's anger.
it's a form of denial, right? To protect yourself.
Oh, I see. Okay, right.
Hmm.
Yeah, she's inured to she's very capable of like tuning out what threatens her
Hmm.
plan. Right.
That's such a good point, Laura. And actually, I found myself wondering, and this is in my notes in the very beginning of the story. It's like, why aren't they asking why? Why aren't they asking why? Um, because so many people have said like nobody stays after Labor Day. They don't ask like, oh, well, why is that? Oh, well, what happens after Labor Day? They just ignore it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it makes me. Yeah, they're just props. The amusement park thing. I saw the original Westworld recently,
Mm.
the old
The
movie.
movie, right?
I
Not
think you and I
okay.
talked about not the TV show, the movie from way back when. But if you've seen that TV show, you'll know it. Just in that premise, you're a tourist and you go to the Wild West, and there's all these characters that essentially serve your experience. And it's just that's what these people in this town are for the Allisons. And so it's like that's just not a question. That's just not a scene that they want to have.
Yeah.
Right? They have like they're
Yep.
playing out their movie of themselves moving to the country, and it's like that's just not a scene. That line of dialogue is not in the scene they want to play. They want to be
No.
thought of as like welcome, like oh we're so glad you're staying, and it's just
Hmm.
not capable. But yeah, I mean
Hmm.
it's
Hmm.
like it's people in the comments have said like she doesn't even know their names, so why would she care?
Right. Right. Well, and even like Mateo earlier said, they're min-maxing their vacation. It's like they're only seeing what they want to see and they're only hearing what they want to hear. And we get the
Right.
feeling that they've done that outside of their vacation too. They've done that in their lives with each
Yeah.
other, with their children. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh
Oh
gosh.
boy. Like this was bleak. I feel like bleak isn't even a good enough word for it for me. Like this felt like it was beautiful because like it's beautiful writing. I mean, looking at it, like can I read the last paragraph? I always
Yes.
find the last paragraph of everything to be
Read the
so
last
key.
paragraph.
Okay, the wind coming up suddenly over the lake swept around the summer cottage and slapped hard at the windows. Mr. and Mrs. Allison involuntarily moved closer together. Ah. And with the first sudden crash of thunder, Mr. Allison reached out and took his wife's hand. And then, while the lightning flashed outside and the radio faded and sputtered, the two old people huddled together in their summer cottage and waited. What do you think they're
It's
waiting for?
okay. That's one important question.
This is the third time they've talked about wait, too. Because, like earlier, no, Mr. Allison said consideringly, I don't think so. Just wait. Because she asks, are we supposed to be doing anything? And he's like, no, we're just supposed to be waiting.
Right. Yes. Okay. So many thoughts here.
I
So
know.
I definitely want to talk about the language of the last paragraph. Literally, what are they waiting for? I think that's an important question just to get off the table. Presumably, I think they're waiting to die, or if not in that moment, it's like they've reached the end of like what life is, and even if
Yeah.
they don't die for another 5 years, like all possible
Mm.
roads to like genuine human experience are now over. Like they've lost their lives in the city because they don't have friends there anymore. Their children barely write them notes, and they're basically never going to hear from them again. And they had one last ditch attempt to build community, build a life in this little town, which has been denied to them. So even if they live for several years longer, this is it, or they're going to die that night.
Yeah.
So that was my read of the last sentence, which is deliciously multivalence. Like there's just so many different ways you could read that. But the language that you read, I'm so glad you read it out loud, of that last stretch stuck out to me a lot, because I feel like that's the only part of the story that's written like that. I feel like she really holds her language until that last paragraph. Just the rest of the piece is much like tighter and clipped. The sentences aren't as long. They're not as poetic. Like I feel like that's the most poetic piece.
I feel like it opens. I remember you read the first sentence in last week's story club, just to give us a taste of what this week was going to be. And I feel like it starts that way, maybe kind of. It's not as poetic, but it's looking at a peaceful, serene place, and then it ends kind of similarly. But it's
What?
not, you're right, it's not that same poetic language.
No, I mean, I'm going to read that first sentence
Yeah, yeah,
again.
yeah, please.
The Allison's country cottage, 7 miles from the nearest town, was set prettily on a hill. From 3 sides, it looked down on soft trees and grass that seldom, even in midsummer, lay still and dry. It's super descriptive. It's not clinical because it is like it's a beautiful little cottage, but it is like so hyper specific.
Mm-hmm.
And I just feel like the throttle opens up
Yeah.
on this last paragraph, just to hear it a second time. The wind
Yeah.
coming up suddenly over the lake swept around the summer cottage and slapped hard at the windows, right? We're like personifying the wind.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. and Mrs. Allison involuntarily moved closer, and with the first sudden crash of thunder, Mr. Allison reached out and took his wife's hand. And then, while the lightning flashed outside and the radio faded and sputtered, this is like, it's loose. The two old people huddled together in their summer cottage and waited. And so it really struck me, like, that ending. And I actually wonder where in the lineage of her stories the summer people, because I feel like other times she doesn't open up the throttle at the end and give it poetic language like this.
Yeah.
Like, I think this is like a common instinct, and we see this all over the place in literature and stories where it's just like, okay, we've gotten to the end. We've earned a little poetic license. We've earned the ability to kind of like, all right, let's be writers for a hot second.
Yeah.
But I feel like other stories of hers end in that without giving, in a way, this is a romantic ending, right? What's actually happening is nihilistic, like you said correctly. But in terms of like the prose is kind of romantic at the end.
Well, and look at their actions. They're involuntarily huddled together, but they're huddled together, and he doesn't really mean to take her hand, but he does. Like, so there's maybe a little bit of hope here.
They're together. Yeah. That is true. They're deeply together. Even in her like clearly like domestically terrible situation of having like an abusive husband or a yelling husband at the very least in the 50s or whatever, they're still together.
Yeah. Have you seen Cabin in the Woods?
I love it. I love Cabin in the Woods. Yeah.
Without spoiling the ending, did this remind you of that ending at all? They held hands and waited.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. That is.
I'm not
like
saying
this,
there's a
right.
connection, but it reminded me of that a little bit. Like it was, yeah, when you're waiting for something together, like how interminable that can be. Sorry.
Well, I love that. I'm glad you brought that up because we've seen that tale so many times in so many movies where it's just like the end and it's the lovers and they're going to die. And usually I feel like the emotional experience of that moment is like, well, life ends, but we have each other and it's love. And it just, we really don't get that here because it's like,
yeah, there are two people. And I mean, those are the same things that you would do with a stranger. Like if you were sitting with someone you didn't know in that house, like they involuntarily moved closer together. These could be two people who don't know each other. Mr. Allison reached out and took her hand like as the thunder crashed. And it's like if I was stranded in a cottage with like someone, I would do that. I don't even maybe know that person's name. And that's a human reaction to like being afraid. That's not, yeah. So yeah.
Yeah. Mateo says it's almost bittersweet that they involuntarily got closer. The facade came off and they finally searched for some genuine comfort from each other.
Yeah. And whether that was because they were married and like reconsidering their lives, or if that was just because there's two human beings who are scared together, finding comfort in another person. I mean, it's really the first time that Shirley Jackson, doesn't show them as being horribly isolated is here in this ending.
That's a great point. I mean, yeah, this really is the only gesture of tenderness from either of them to anyone.
Yeah.
not just each other the whole
Yep.
time.
Yeah. Ooh, Mateo. Yes. Rogue One flashbacks. I loved Rogue One. I know that's like the fanboys will get mad, but like I thought Rogue One was incredible for that ending. So I don't, Asa, if you've seen it.
Never seen it.
Okay. Oh my gosh. It's very much like the end of Cabin in the Woods.
Okay.
It's like two people who like don't 100% really know each other, but like they're together at the end, and it's meaningful because they're together.
Yeah. Wow. Gosh. Okay. Well, let's get to this essential question.
Yes.
We're writers. We're reading. We're reading to write better. What are we going to take from this, Sarah? What are you going to take from this to your own projects and writing?
I'm going to take some licensure to break more rules. I think that Shirley Jackson, I was serious earlier when I said that she was like reinventing like what it meant to tell a horror story. And she does not care about convention. She does not care. The beginning of this story is super slow paced. It's still interesting, but you know, today if we were to write and submit this story today, they'd be like, no, you need to begin it, you know, closer to the middle. You need to like get in the action. So that's something that I think, you know, and she did that very deliberately. And just doing this, like we've been talking about this whole time, like magically somehow infusing the mundane. Because if you read this as a story without the implications of violence, without the underlying simmering threat, it's like a couple decides to stay at a lake house. People say, maybe you shouldn't do that. They decide to stay at the house. You know, they run out of kerosene. Their car doesn't start. The end. It's like, that's not a story. But like what makes it a story is the emotional journey that we're going on through these subtle clues. And just, I'm just astonished by like the mastery with which she can take those little details and create a whole mood with them.
Yeah, amen. I hear all that. I agree. I agree with all of that. Yeah, I think, gosh, I think for me, among the many things, is this when to omit a cause to the effect. You know, you brought that up very clearly, like cause and effect. We have cause and effect. The story is like A leads to B leads to C. What alphabet can you use besides A to Z? Because there's a different alphabet being used here. You know, it's logical. There is a cause and effect, but it's not this character did this thing that led to this king, and just sort of, the licensure to identify alternate modes of like storytelling logic and just leaving out stuff. As long as it makes sense to you, it's going to make sense to us as readers. Yeah. Gosh. Ooh. Gosh. What a good one. Mateo says subtlety is definitely something I'm taking away from it. I was working with subtlety in a scene I recently wrote. Yeah, Sarah, what is, you know, you use this word too. Like what can you point to exactly what you mean by the subtlety?
Yeah. This is the thing about subtlety is it's subtle, but when we're talking about these subtle elements, we're talking about, I think, things that our subconscious picks up on that are not necessarily like hammered home. And we're picking up on these things because they're signals that we're familiar with in our lives. And again, maybe we're not picking up on it the first time around. I had to read this twice, and I picked up the second time was when I really picked up on the husband's temper. And she's like peeling the skin off of apples with a paring knife. Her husband comes in and she's just holding a knife. So it's not, the scene that has been set is on the surface, she's peeling apples for a pie. Like what could be more domestic than that? But really, her husband comes in, he's angry, she's nervous and afraid, she's holding a knife. Like there's a second way to read it. I don't know if I'm explaining this well at all, but like that's an example of one of the subtler moments in this story. So Shirley Jackson doesn't say like, you know, she doesn't make a big deal out of things. Maybe that's what it is. She doesn't say like, and Mrs. Allison, comma, who was holding a knife in her hand, comma, the tip
Right.
of which was pointed at her husband, comma, who was
Right.
angry. Like, it's very, like, the facts are presented and almost obscured.
Yes.
They're obscured within the normalcy of these actions. Like, she's making a pie. Of course she's holding a knife.
Yes. I love
But
this.
it's
I
there for a
love
reason.
this. It makes me think of like how you could just be watching the movie of this on silent, you
Mm.
know, and so much would kind of read, you know,
Yeah.
like I heard somebody describe the difference between like writing a good play and a good movie. Like a movie, you're telling a story with images and the words are kind of there just to support the images. And I'm imagining that. I'm imagining like a scene where you just see a woman in a kitchen with a knife in her hand and a man walks in, and it's like, if you strip it from what's being said, if you strip it, it's like the threat is vast right
Yeah.
there. But yeah, it's a paring knife and it's apples,
Yeah.
but it's still the core image is like there and live.
Yeah, the thing with subtlety is that it can always be argued down. It can always be, someone could just say, well, she's making an apple pie. Stop
Right.
reading into it. You know, you're
Right.
reading too deep into it. It's like, no, it's there and it was placed purposefully there. Like,
Yeah.
as a writer, there's a reason, or maybe there's not a reason, and maybe there should be a reason why things are happening when they do and for what reason.
That's something I've been thinking about recently in my own writing a little bit. I think you and I were talking about this yesterday, or just the two of us at some point, just like when it's happening for a reason and you don't need to get it at the time.
Mm.
Like you can let some high schooler in English class 30 years from now unpack it. You know what I mean? Like she might, and maybe she realized it in revising, but I just wonder when she's sitting down for that first draft and rendering that scene with the paring knife. And it's like, I think that is just issuing forth, you know, and then maybe afterwards she tweaks it to be like, okay, this is an element of menace. How do I kind of make it shine a little bit more? But yeah, just like it's that tension between like, yes, every word has a purpose, but it's like I wrote this. Oh, well, we talked about you've been writing all these pages that you might not use. It's like, what was the purpose? I know that just the inner logic of it all is what you're making me think of.
Well, and I think too, that's such a good point that you make, that like maybe she didn't put it into the first version. Like not every author is like, and then I will have an allusion to page 23 on page 1. And then this will symbolically tie into this. A lot of what comes out when we write is intuitive. And like, we're working our own personal subtleties into our work, and then later during editing, you know, the editor may have been like, hey, you've got like she's making a pie, like she's holding a knife, like do you want to play that up a little bit, like that could create meaning. So I think that if you're all of a sudden like, holy cow, I don't know how to plan all of this subtlety into my work, I don't think you have to. I think that you just go with your intuition and see what grows out of your story.
Well, one thing that I've just been like kind of trying to put on a Shirley Jackson hat while writing is which has like I think organically engendered degree of subtlety is like she very much just shows don't tells. There's very little like editorializing in her senses. It's very much like, you know, instead of hurried out the door, it's like walked rapidly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like hurriedly, like there's not like an image, like a concrete image with that. But she like is so laser with like the thing that almost everything she writes, you could specifically see. And it's like I found myself when I've started to write like that and like really see what it is that I'm writing, it forces a more specificity, which I think the subtlety naturally follows from.
Yeah,
Is what
I think
I'm finding.
so. I think that's really good. And again, sorry, I'm sitting on the floor and my legs are going to sleep. But
Oh, no.
You've read far more Shirley Jackson than I have. And is this something that she does pretty consistently with the rest of her work?
Her work is just so tight in my experience. It really propels us forward. It doesn't, I mean, she's just, it's so, I think just she's very image. I just think it's like, I feel like I'm watching movies when I'm reading her stories because she's just arraying images in front of us and asking us to like derive meaning from them, and the images are so specific usually. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Whew, man, this has just been a doozy. Y'all, it is Tuesday.
It is.
Happy Tuesday. We will be picking up next week on Wednesday and Thursday with our 2 story clubs. Sarah, do you want to tell everyone about the other story club that we do on this channel?
Yes. So on Wednesdays, we do Sci-Fi Story Club, in which we are going through the Big Book of Science Fiction compiled by Anne and Jeff Vandermeer. And again, that is on Wednesdays usually. So just this week is an exception. So that is Wednesdays at, are we moving to 3 p.m. Central?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
A little time change too, those of you. 3 p.m. Central, we'll meet next week and we'll be reading The Comet. So, but what are we reading next week for Horror Story Club?
Next week we have Harlan Ellison, who is a name I've read 1,000 times, who I've never read though. This is a famous writer. And The Whimper of Whipped Dogs is the name of the story.
Oh boy.
On the night after the day she had stained the louvered window shutters of her new apartment on East 52nd Street, Beth saw a woman slowly and hideously knifed to death in the courtyard of her building. It's on.
Yeah.
from sentence 1.
Well, so like even the title is triggering. Like it's like, is it going to be animal abuse? Is it? Oh, and there's a
the title
right
is its own content warning.
Yeah. So we're getting into it.
So that's next week, everybody. Any parting thoughts, Sarah? Any parting thoughts from anyone in the comments?
Let's see. Come hang out with us on Discord. There should be a link in the description for this. Yes. Mateo says that first sentence was not subtle. Yes. Just comes right out and says it. But again, it's effective in a different way, in its own way. And that's the beauty of reading an anthology like this, is you just get quick hit, like different flavors of so many different styles. So yeah. I'm excited to read more.
Discord link in your
I will.
Just make sure
I will do that. Yes. All right. I'm putting our Discord here in the chat. Please do come join us. Obviously, it's not mandatory, but if you want to be part of our community and not isolated like the Allisons, come join us on Discord.
Right. Come join us. Yeah. There's plenty of scene. And I'd be down to write later this week, maybe, Sarah, if you are. I'm
around. Folks in the Discord, let us know if you're doing any writing this week. The beautiful thing is that Asa has set this up to be not just a story club, but this is a story club for writers. So the reason that we're reading all of these stories is to learn what works, what doesn't work, what we like, what we don't like, and what feels effective to us. And so please do also come join us for a writing session sometime soon.
Yeah. Sarah and I both have YouTube channels, depending on whose channel you found this stream on. If you want to stay up with everything, do subscribe. And it is there that on those channels that you'll see news of future streams.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, everybody.
All right, friends, take good care, and we'll see you soon.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.